people that are bringing the Bitcoin ecosystem to life, we invest in those companies. I think about it like this. Bitcoin is a commodity. It's an asset. It's similar to gold or oil is a commodity or an asset. Now, the price of oil has been, for the last 50 years, has been relatively around $60 a barrel. I guess this 80, 90 gets down to 40, 50, but it's about 60, $70 a barrel. So you could certainly buy oil, the commodity. You can buy oil futures on the commodity, oil ETFs, or there's an oil industry. That's the 8th largest industry in the world. It's worth about $4.6 trillion, right? So there's an oil industry around oil, the asset. Gold, similar, same thing, right? And so Bitcoin is the same way, where Bitcoin is a commodity, Bitcoin is an asset, but there's an entire Bitcoin industry being built around it. And just like oil has hovered around, $40 to $80, meanwhile, the industry is becoming worth trillions. Bitcoin obviously is doing amazing as the asset, but the industry offers way more alpha.
A well-known businessman, investor, and instructor, Mark Moss is recognized for his knowledge of macroeconomic patterns and Bitcoin. In a recent interview, he boldly asserted that a significant change in the global financial system is imminent. A new age of creativity and economic freedom is about to sunrise, according to Moss, as a result of the convergence of Bitcoin, decentralization, and cutting-edge technology like artificial intelligence. He believes that during the next 50 years, Bitcoin may overtake the dollar as the main form of global reserve currency. This change might propel Bitcoin's value to previously unheard-of heights, driven by geopolitical instability and an increasing need for decentralized solutions worldwide. Moss says we're about to enter a golden age of financial possibility as big participants like governments and institutional investors embrace Bitcoin more and more. Watch till the end as we examine his groundbreaking discoveries, consider Bitcoin's potential for enormous expansion, and discover how this revolution can alter the course of history. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for your daily crypto news, and let's get started.
Back to what I've been talking about for 4 years now, we're seeing this end of globalism and this swing back to decentralization. So I think that's really important to understand. And then, like I said, I think this election cycle really proves that, because it wasn't just Trump winning. It was a complete smackdown, a complete rejection of all of the globalist ideas and agendas. That's what lost. And not just lost barely, but lost to a complete smackdown. And so I think you see the world changing. And the reason why it's important to understand that is that we all have to have like this lens or this frame that we view the world through. And then once we have that frame or that lens, then we can start to project out, what's going to happen next. I think Bitcoin sort of takes over this global unit of account in less than 50 years, based off of history and cycle, understanding technology, adoption curves. I think in about 50 years, it'll probably be this unit of account. And if we get to that point, at some point, which is probably going to be decades in front of us, the dollar would have to be reset to something. And then we might be looking at that. But I don't think it's coming anytime soon. I'd love it if we went back to a sound money standard. That'd be great. So I guess I'd love to see that happen. I think it'd be really good for society to be on a sound money standard. However, if we switch to a hard money standard tomorrow, it would be catastrophic. It'd be catastrophic. So we can't just switch to that. So what are they trying to achieve, right? I think at the end of the day, I try to remind people, which sounds very controversial, is that we don't want money. Nobody wants money. What we want is the goods and services that money buys us. Money is a medium of exchange. It's a storehold of wealth, store of energy, and it's a medium of exchange, allows us to get the things that we want, the true wealth, the goods and services, and it sets a unit of account, so it puts a number or a way to measure that wealth and that value. And so ultimately, whether it's dollars or euros or yens or gold or chickens or Bitcoin, what difference does it make? What I want is goods and services. What I want is the quality of my life to improve. And so I need my money to buy me more goods and services in the future than less. And of course, Bitcoin is a way to preserve that purchasing power, because with fiat currency, it fails. So most of us, and it was a broad question, I'm not sure how to classify this, but for those people who are ready to see this change brought in, good, then move to Bitcoin. Use Bitcoin as your unit of account right now. Most of the world are seeing prices getting so expensive that they're being priced out of houses. They're being priced out of cars. The quality of their life is going down. They can't afford the same amount of goods and services they used before, but that's only if you're pricing things in dollars. If you're pricing things in Bitcoin, it's a completely different world for you. So you and I can just go usher in that world right now. We can move ourselves to a Bitcoin standard and achieve that. I do, again, want for society, I believe it would be beneficial to be on a fixed money standard, but I understand that's going to take a long period of time. Back to sort of the other part of the question that you asked is then, if we really want to see that world brought in, then what are we actively doing for that? And I think that's kind of where you talked about like the hodling piece, where a lot of Bitcoiners are hodlers now. They're holding, right? They're saving their wealth there, but they think that they can just go disappear on a hill. I'm going to hold my, whatever it is, 6.15 Bitcoin, and I'm going to emerge out of my cave in 50 years from now, and the whole world's going to be better. But it's not going to be better unless people actually do the work. Because what you're doing is you may emerge and maybe have more purchasing power, but how is the world going to be any better if no one's actually doing anything to improve the world? So if you're not going to do it, then who is? Like you're going to expect BlackRock to go build that world for you? Build or be built. And that's either we either build the world that we want, or someone else will build it for us, and we're just not going to be happy with that. I'm probably not going to be happy in a world that Mark Cuban designed for me. I'm probably not going to be happy in a world that Obama designed for me. I'm not going to be happy in a world that Larry Fink designed for me. But if I do nothing, that's what I get. And so as Bitcoiners, we should be actively building the world that we want. And we have a perfect example of this right now, Brad. Think about what just happened with the election. There's so many moving pieces. I don't want to say the most important, but arguably one of the single most important data points is Twitter. If it wasn't for Twitter and free speech, I don't think we would be here today with the blow to globalism and Trump in office. And by having one outlet that allowed us to have this open communication, it moved the Overton window.
Trump's recent election victory puts the cryptocurrency sector in a strong position to influence American policy. Prominent cryptocurrency companies, including Coinbase, Circle, Kraken, and Ripple, are competing for seats on Trump's proposed Crypto Advisory Council. This council will be crucial in determining the country's policies on digital assets, such as the possible establishment of a Bitcoin reserve and new laws that support cryptocurrencies. As the council is being formed, leading companies including Paradigm and Bitcoin Magazine are aggressively working to have their viewpoints represented. The group is anticipated to collaborate closely with regulatory organizations such as the SEC and CFTC, and it may even be headed by a crypto czar who is responsible for overseeing federal cryptocurrency regulations. The cryptocurrency industry is hopeful that executive orders could guarantee banking access for cryptocurrency businesses and put an end to the governmental crackdowns of recent years, especially since Bitcoin has reached new record highs. How do you feel about these fascinating advancements? Tell us in the comments section below. Let's return to Mark Moss now, who offers information about two of his Bitcoin-focused businesses that are pushing adoption to unprecedented levels.
Yeah, so I have two companies that I can talk about right now, and they're both in the Bitcoin space. They're both a little bit different. So the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund is a VC fund, right? And so we're actively deploying capital to build the world that we want. I'm partners in that fund with James Lavish, Larry Lepard, Greg Foss, and David Foley. And so it's a venture capital hedge fund. And basically we have investors that bring in money, and then we're deploying that into businesses that are building on and around the Bitcoin ecosystem. So this is everything from Bitcoin mining companies to Bitcoin power grid companies to Bitcoin security protocols or security keys, Bitcoin insurance products, people that are bringing the Bitcoin ecosystem to life. We invest in those companies. I think about it like this. Bitcoin is a commodity. It's an asset, similar to gold or oil as a commodity or an asset. Now, the price of oil has been, for the last 50 years, has been relatively around $60 a barrel. I guess this 80, 90 gets down to 40, 50, but it's about 60, $70 a barrel. So you could certainly buy oil, the commodity. You can buy oil futures on the commodity, oil ETFs, or there's an oil industry that's the 8th largest industry in the world. It's worth about $4.6 trillion. Like, who designed the new drill bit so the head can go horizontally for miles now? And who designed the new pressure transfer system to move oil through the pipeline? And right? So there's an oil industry around oil, the asset. Gold, similar, same thing, right? Who designed the new sonar for the ship to sail through the Straits of Hormuz or whatever? And so Bitcoin is the same way, where Bitcoin is a commodity, Bitcoin is an asset, but there's an entire Bitcoin industry being built around it. And just like oil has hovered around, $40 to $80, meanwhile, the industry is becoming worth trillions. Bitcoin obviously is doing amazing as the asset, but the industry offers way more alpha, meaning way more growth potential in the industry. And when you think about it in gold industry, oil industry, you start to get the idea. And so that's what the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund does. The first fund, we're a closed fund, so we raised money, we closed it. We have a new fund that's opening sometime in December. And so if you want to chuck a couple shekels in to build the world that you want, that's what I would say to do. And we're seeing these projects come to life. I have another company that's I don't know when this will air, but it's going public mid-November. Maybe by the time you hear this, we'll have gone public in Toronto Stock Exchange, and the company is called Matador, and we are a sister company to Metaplanet, which you just mentioned. Meaning our largest investor is the lead investor on both projects, and we're doing a very similar thing. They're doing it in Japan, we're doing it in North America, and we're building a publicly traded vehicle to hold Bitcoin on the balance sheet and deploy that MicroStrategy playbook. And then we'll be deploying that Bitcoin as well as doing mergers and acquisitions and playing in the layer 2, layer 3 space, which is where we think most of the growth will be. I believe that there's a massive need for institutional capital to allocate towards publicly exposed Bitcoin opportunities. There's not very many of them. And there's not really a good one for like playing in the layer 2, layer 3 space, which is where I believe all the growth will come. And so Matador is deploying capital there. Two very different things. Bitcoin Opportunity Fund is a closed fund. We're not holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet. We do use Bitcoin as the unit of account. So the goal of the BOF is to return on top of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is our unit of account. So we have to beat Bitcoin.
Yep. The hurdle rate.
But it's a VC fund. We're investing into projects that we think in 5 years are going to be massive, and hopefully we get some big home runs out of that. Whereas Matador is a different company, and specifically running more of a MicroStrategy playbook, Bitcoin on the balance sheet, that type of thing.
Mark Moss discusses two significant initiatives influencing Bitcoin's future. He begins by discussing the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund, BOF, a venture capital fund that he co-manages with prominent figures in the field, including David Foley, Greg Foss, and James Lavish. The fund makes investments in companies that are part of the Bitcoin ecosystem, such as mining firms, power grid solutions, and Bitcoin security measures. Moss emphasizes that although Bitcoin has substantial asset value, the true growth comes from the sectors that are centered around it, which have enormous upside potential. He compares Bitcoin to commodities like gold and oil. A new fund for investors who wish to participate in the Bitcoin-driven future will open in December, although the BOF is currently closed. Moss then discusses Matador, a business that will list on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Like MicroStrategy, Matador plans to keep Bitcoin on its balance sheet and invest in Bitcoin-related technology, especially in the expanding Layer 2 and Layer 3 markets. This strategy seeks to draw in institutional funding and offer a publicly available platform for Bitcoin exposure. According to Moss, institutional investors will look for these kinds of possibilities more frequently as the Bitcoin market expands. In conclusion, Mark Moss's endeavors demonstrate his conviction in the enormous potential of Bitcoin, not only as an asset but also as the cornerstone of a flourishing ecosystem. Through venture capital or publicly traded businesses, Moss is setting himself and his businesses up to profit from Bitcoin's and its related infrastructure's future. With enormous development potential ahead of them, these businesses are important in hastening the widespread adoption of Bitcoin. Until next time, happy investing.